Hey, this is Robert McCready with, I think, the 17th episode of Evening Magic, and I have Nita Sweeney here. She is the author of four books, and the latest one is A Daily Dose of Now that came out November 1st. Nita Sweeney, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is really, really fun. I like what you're doing with these.
Oh, thank you so much. So this is your fourth book, correct?
That's right. That's right. If you,
Uh,
well, if you count the Korean translation of the first one, that was kind of fun. But yeah, it's the fourth book.
Did you translate it to Korean?
No, no, no. My publisher, they sell it to a company that translates it. Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's cool. So four books, and how many years has it been since you started publishing books?
Well, the first book was picked up the in 2018 and was actually published in 2019. So Mango Publishing Group um, offered me a contract for Depression Hates a Moving Target in 2018, and then the book actually came out in 2019. So what's that, 5 years?
You're catching up to Natalie Goldberg.
I don't know if I'll ever catch up to her, but I've had a lot. I mean, I had a lot in the drawer because I've been writing a long time. So that's a lot of it. I had a lot of stuff I really wanted to work on, and Mango was really interested. Now, this most recent book came out from a different publisher, but Mango was interested in it, but it didn't end up going through, which happens. That just happens where they're not. It wasn't right for them. So
Do you have
yeah,
an
but
agent?
no, no, I did attempt to get an agent. I These statistics will not be good. I mean, there's are not cheery statistics, but I pitched 108 agents, 132 publishers that don't require agents, and entered, I believe, 30 contests to get the first book, to get the contract for the first book. And then once you have a contract with a publishing, with a traditional publishing company, you still have to pitch your books. I've written book proposals for a number of different books, and including A Daily Dose of Now, which didn't make it, but other proposals did. And I hammer out ideas with the publisher, Brenda Knight. Excuse me. And if she likes the idea, then I have to write a proposal. I mean, you kind of start from not from scratch because you have the relationship with the editor, but there's not, just because you're in there, it doesn't mean everything's all, I mean, just slam dunk right away. And that, I don't know that that was a huge surprise, but it was a little more work than I anticipated, and that's okay. That's just, I'm still grateful, grateful, grateful.
Well, the way I found you is that I was interested in who Natalie Goldberg's students were. And I've mentioned Natalie Goldberg on this show before. Paul Leslie was on episode 10, and he's interviewed Natalie three times. And I found Paul because of Natalie Goldberg's interviews there. Um, and now Natalie and I are friends and we write letters and stuff. I was wondering who her students were, and I would Google it and I couldn't find anything. Then I just started typing in one of the phrases from Katagiri, which was continue under all circumstances. And when I Googled that, I found where you, Nita, said it in an interview. And that is how I discovered a student of Natalie Goldberg.
That's amazing. Gotta love the internet. Yeah, I mean, there's three phrases from Katagiri that are my marching orders too. And it's don't be tossed away, continue under all circumstances, and make positive effort for the good. And then Natalie adds, even if it's just brushing your teeth, because that's what he told her at that time. But yeah, that's great that you found me that way. And thank you for finding me, because that's, I mean, that's like the hugest thing for an author is for someone that they don't know who happens to have a mutual interest to find them. I mean, it just makes your day. So
It,
thank you.
it feels like an interesting discovery. And often I find that the interest is more genuine in that way because you find the one interview, and I found it at work, and then you don't read it all at once, and you go back, and then you look on social media, and then you decide, I'm going to get that book, and then you read the book, and then you write to them and say, oh, I read your book. It's fun.
It's
And
it's bliss from the other end. It's absolutely bliss. So
oh, I'm
just
glad.
yeah, I
Um,
can't. I mean, keep doing that with other authors because boy, that lights us up. That
I'm
because I
glad.
mean, you're a writer too, right? And you know how it's often. I mean, you really feel like you're shouting into the void. I mean, you just don't know. Is anybody out there? And so when people respond, it's pretty amazing.
Right. I wrote, um, recently I wrote a story that another author tweeted a recommendation, and it was 1996 by Gloria Naylor.
Oh
And
yeah,
Tao Lin tweeted it, and Gloria Naylor had been a National Book Award winner. And Oprah turned her first book into a miniseries, The Women of Brewster Place. When she wrote 1996, her regular publisher wouldn't publish it, and she went to an independent black press. And I thought, why wouldn't they publish it? What are they scared of? And I'm kind of conspiracy minded, so I read the book, and she, said that the NSA was stalking her, and half of it took place in South Carolina, where I live. And so I thought, I wonder if this really happened. I'm going to go down to St. Helena and check it out. So I went down there and checked it out, and I made some discoveries. And I wrote this story. Towlin published it, nominated it for a Pushcart Prize, and I went to Connecticut recently to present it at a conference. It's taken me all this way, and I've met other people that told me they find the story comforting and they keep it up on their browser while they're looking at other things. Actually, Miss Unity, he's a writer and a drag queen. He tweeted that he keeps it open on his browser while he's looking at other things because the story's kind of comforting, and I understand that. Sometimes you just want your favorite book around you,
yeah,
even
they're
if you're
like
not currently reading.
right, like safety blankets. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have any book safety blankets with you right now?
Oh, well, I don't have them right here, but I have to say, Writing Down the Bones. I mean, we're talking about Natalie Goldberg and her two books. I think, I'm not sure if they were her first and second or her first and third, but Writing Down the Bones and then Wild Mind, which is not as well known as Writing Down the Bones. Those two are books I read again and again and again. Because even four books in, I sometimes still feel lost in the writing journey. And so I read those and I feel comforted. And it's so funny because if you've ever met Natalie, she's not a warm, fuzzy person. She's kind of a hard, I mean, she's a nice person. I enjoy her a lot, but she's not going to tell you, oh, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. I mean, she tells you the truth. And somehow, even with that, those books are comforting to me. So those are probably my um, go-tos if I'm having a rough time. And then Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird. That's another one that's a real, just a classic. But really, those two books by Nat are um,
Have
my
you met
comfort.
Have you met Anne Lamott in real life?
I know, well, yes, she signed a book for me. I was at a reading. She came to, did I go out there? I can't remember if she came here. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and I may have gone to the Bay Area. My husband's from California, so we used to travel out there. I just can't remember where she was, but so no, I don't, met her is, I can't really say that I've met her. I spent 2 minutes with her while she was signing my book, and I, probably fawned all over her and gushed, and she probably rolled her eyes and went to the next. I mean, after as big as she is, she's probably a great person. I don't know, but no. Have you met her?
I haven't met her. I used to have a rapport with Andy McDowell when she was on Twitter,
Yeah.
and Andy McDowell loved Anne Lamott. They hadn't met in real life, but um, we would talk about Anne Lamott, um, just in third person on Twitter, and that was fun.
Yeah.
Um, the Andy McDowell was also a South Carolinian, and I knew her niece, and so we were able to have a little rapport there. The Natalie Goldberg book, that's my comfort book, and I read it regularly, is Let the Whole Thundering World Come Home.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good one.
I
Yes,
like
yeah, I mean, all of her books kind of have writing in them, but I would say of hers that are not really writing books, Long Quiet Highway is another one for me. I mean, I know she wrote another book that reveals some things that she didn't know in Long Quiet Highway, but that something about that journey going through all her teachers and everything she learned, I really enjoy that one too.
Long Quiet Highway, I was in MFA school and they gave us assignments of nonfiction books. And there was one that I was like, oh, I'm not interested in that. I'm going to read Long Quiet Highway in its place, which isn't allowed, but gray area. I'll just
Yeah.
do another nonfiction book. And I remember the story about Cuba, New Mexico that Natalie Goldberg wrote about in Long Quiet Highway. And then I remember the story when she threw down a dish when she was arguing with her husband. And I remember when she, as a student, the classroom yelled, "We hate you" to the teacher. I remember those stories. What's your favorite
Yeah.
part of Long Quiet Highway?
It was when she was in, I don't know if she was in the Zen Center or she was someplace where she was meeting Katagiri. She was seeing him. She may have already been studying with him. I can't remember the timing, but she turned a corner and he was watering a flower. It might have been an orchid. And it seems like it might have been a cut flower, which wouldn't have been an orchid. I can't remember the detail, which is sad. But he was so present with what he was doing that it completely mesmerized her. And he looked up, and I think it must have been a cut flower because there was something about the fact that the flower had lasted that long. And he realized what she was thinking, and he said something like, when you're present with something, it lasts forever, or when you're present with something, it knows you care for it or something. And that, just that moment between them, that was one of the most powerful things. Where in Zen especially, they talk about transmission, where it's not, the teaching is not necessarily in words. There are lots of words, but the teaching is in action and a way of holding yourself, the way the teacher is present. And that to me was the epitome of transmission, where he was just doing a thing and she was completely understanding what it was like to be present without him actually saying a word. He eventually did, but so that's probably the moment that just really struck me in that book. There's lots of other moments, including some of the ones that you mentioned, but that was just one that really stuck with me.
So, are you, is Natalie Goldberg how you came to Zen? Is that something that you practice outside of writing?
Well, I actually practice more of mindfulness or vipassana is the technical tradition, but I came to meditation through my husband. And I was dating him at the time. I don't know, we'd probably been dating a couple of maybe not even months. I don't know. And he was at my house. We weren't living together yet. We had dinner. And afterwards, he said, "You want to sit?" And I said, "You want to what?" And he had been studying Zen with at Zen Mountain Monastery. He had just moved to Ohio when I met him. He hadn't been here very long. And he'd been studying with Katagiri Roshi at Zen Mountain Monastery in New Jersey. And he'd actually been through, a number of 10-day silent Rinzai retreats, or, well, Daido is kind of a little bit of both Rinzai and Soto. But, he was a pretty regular meditator, Ed, my husband, and I was dating at the time. And so he set the microwave timer for 5 minutes and suggested I try not to fidget. So that was my basically first meditation instruction in my life, was just try not to fidget, which of course I fidgeted. And he suggested I focus on my breath, but mainly just to get through 5 minutes without going crazy, it just seemed kind of nuts. And I'd heard of meditation and, sort of was around it a little bit, but that was it. And I wasn't sold at first. It wasn't until I kept dating him. I really liked him. And so I would meditate with him. Sometimes we would sit. And then I did go to a couple groups that he was going to. But I was having some back problems. And my husband, had a set of tapes from John Kabat-Zinn, the mindfulness-based stress reduction, which introduces meditation for pain relief, essentially. And you also do some they're kind of like yoga, but you're really just sitting still or lying still or in a very still posture. And it really worked. I mean, it really helped relax the muscles in my back in a way that I hadn't thought could happen, and also my ability to tolerate the pain and not react to it, not tense up, really helped. And so that's where I really started thinking, oh, there's something to this. And then from there, it transformed into something much bigger than pain relief. But it took time. I wasn't convinced. And then, so that was probably 1993. And then when at the time I was practicing law and I ended up stopping that. That's a whole nother long story that's in lots of books. But I was looking for a writing workshop, and a friend told me about Natalie, and I'd read Bones years before while I was still practicing law, and had even done some timed writing. I wrote legal briefs all the time, and memos and things like that. And so I was even using her techniques, and I thought, oh my gosh, she does workshops. And so that's how I met Natalie. As I decided to go to one of her workshops in Taos, and I I fell in love with the workshops and the people there, and Nat's style of teaching, and and it just meshed because I was already meditating pretty seriously by then, and I could feel she didn't talk about Zen then as much as she will now, but I could feel the Zen in what she was doing. I could really feel the meditative process, and she would talk about it some, but now she will say that what she's really teaching is Zen.
Well, that's so interesting. I've only had one class with Natalie, and it was a free class online in December 2021,
Yeah,
with that Santa Fe bookstore, collected works.
right.
And she invited like her email list, and so we signed up, and I wrote, and I got to do it. So that was the only time I took a class. What was You spoke to it a little bit that she didn't mention Zen in the class. What was it like? Because you took many workshops with her and then moved to Taos to be there regularly. And ironically and coincidentally, when you moved there, then she started living in Minnesota.
It was insane.
So what was
Yeah.
this? What was it? What were you getting from in person?
Um, that's hard to describe. I think it's because you're just immersed in it. And so there's no turning off your computer and walking away. You're on the grounds that these classes were at Mabel Dodge Lujan House, which has its own history of, Ansel Adams and George O'Keeffe and all these amazing creatives. And I was with 59 other people. And in the early days, we were all talking, which it's so funny because now I can't even imagine that. But we called them the talking workshops after we went into more silence. And so I was meeting all these people, and Nat would have her class, and then she would break us up into small groups, and we would go write together. And so you were seeing a person, their entire body, and experiencing them for an entire week, eating meals together. You had a roommate usually, and so you were experiencing that. The Mabel Dodge Lujan House grounds were beautiful. You were in New Mexico under the giant, the huge, huge sky with the mountain looking over us. It was such a sensory experience that it's hard to describe because it was so much more than just, looking at someone's head and shoulders through a screen. And yeah, we did writing and we read aloud, which you can do online, and there's nothing wrong with online work, but that actual experience of eating, sleeping, breathing, walking. And so we do walking meditation, and it's amazing. This is true in meditation retreats too. It's amazing what you learn from someone without them saying a word, by the way they carry themselves, by the way they walk, by the way they even hold their notebook, by the way they interact with Natalie, by the way they turn their head, all of those kinds of things. And you don't necessarily take that in consciously, but by the end of the week, you know those people. I mean, you really know them. And then of course, when you write with them, you know how writing practices, for those of people who may not be familiar, it's a timed writing. It's like free writing. We call it free writing, but the emphasis is on sensory detail, on capturing the first thought that happens when you flash on something and just putting that down without any editorial comment. And so people would just, by the second or third day, people were just pouring themselves onto these pages. And not only would you hear their words, you would see them, their whole body as they were reading. And it's just a completely different immersion into the experiences. I mean, I'm not sure that it can be replicated online. I just don't know, but it was pretty amazing to be there. And then I was within a few workshops, I actually began assisting her where I would teach the rules of writing practice, and then she would I
I
would
will hear it
watch.
wrong.
Yeah, you're behind. They're behind you. I know. I love that. Um, but if somebody was struggling, she would have them come either join my group or just have me talk to them a little bit because she was so busy with the class, and there were 60 of us often, and that's a lot of people for to manage. And sometimes there was a co-teacher, but sometimes there was just her and I. And um, and so she would have them come to me and we would talk about what they were going through. And it wasn't, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but I could talk about how you just go back to the page, just go back to the page, go back, just continue. And so that was kind of my job for almost 10 years. It was like 9.5 years I did that with her, which is
Is that
amazing. Amazing. Yeah.
is that the Rio Grande Forge in the painting behind you?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a right. It's oh God, I can't remember. Hold on. Inger Jerby. Ingerjirby. Inger Jerby is the painter, and yes, it is a one of her series of the Rio Grande Gorge in
Okay.
oil.
I wondered if it was a Natalie Goldberg painting.
No, I do have several of hers. They're not in here though. I had one behind me, but it was so big that it was, I don't know, I couldn't quite, and that one's not quite right. I have to tilt my screen up so you could really see it, but I probably need to drop the painting a little bit. And what's weird is because of Zoom, the way Zoom is, with your backgrounds and stuff, if I drop that painting down lower on the wall, then when I walk in here, it'll be below my line of vision. But sitting here, it would be perfect if I dropped it about 2 inches and then you could actually see it. It's a beautiful painting, but yeah. And Natalie's paintings are fun too. She just is. Her paintings are almost like caricatures. They're very interesting.
Yeah, I have two of them. I have one called Canoe and a Path, and I have another one, um, I don't bike in a coffee shop. I think
Oh
that's,
yes, yeah. She has a lot of coffee shop and a lot of bike paintings and chairs too. Still need
yeah.
chairs.
I want to
I
get
have.
a chair one.
Oh yeah, I have the one that is on the back of the current edition of oh my God, what's the I can't remember the name of her book that's about painting and writing.
Um,
Oh my
I
gosh,
know what you're talking about.
I
Color,
can't remember.
color, and
Yeah, Living Color, Living Color.
yeah.
Yeah, so I have the painting that is the back cover of Living Color. It's a
Okay, cool.
beautiful.
Yeah, I've got mine, and I have this weird. My house is from the 1940s, and there's this. It's not a hallway, but it's like this big square room where you can get to two bedrooms and a bathroom, and there's no windows in this big square room. There's not. It's empty space. It's you don't even need it, But there's no sunlight there, so I put the paintings in there because I am paranoid now that
Oh yeah, you
they.
should. That's what mine are in the hallway because that I don't want them to have any. And we put non-glare glass and the UV glass on them. But yeah, no, very smart, very smart. Protect
Thank
them.
you. One of the things I think it was in Running Hates a Depression Hates a Moving Target, and it might be on your social media. There were instances where your husband or you and your husband won humanist awards.
He did, yes. He won the Humanist of the Year award. That was probably in Depression Hates a Moving Target. Yeah.
When I read that, usually humanist awards are for atheists.
Yes, my husband is definitely an atheist.
Okay, I didn't know if you were also, and I was going to ask how that related to Buddhism and if you were a Buddhist.
Yeah, I consider myself, I don't know if you call myself agnostic. It's just that I like to be in the question. I just
Mhm.
figure I'm not going to know until it's over. Um, and the thing about Buddhism, I don't necessarily consider myself a Buddhist so much as a Buddhist practitioner. I did take vows with the teacher Shinzen Young, probably pretty shortly after I started going to retreats with him, because it was a way to set an intention that, yes, I'm serious about my practice. But the thing about Buddhism is there's not really any beliefs other than you want to practice. And often you follow a teacher, but the teacher, even the Buddha himself, will say you have to find the answer inside yourself. If it doesn't, you're looking for your own experience. And so there's not okay, I should back up. There are forms of Buddhism where there are beliefs. It's Buddhism is a lot like Christianity in the sense that there's 10,000 schools, but most of the three main schools of Buddhism, Zen, Vipassana, which comes from mindfulness or Vipassana, that comes from the Theravada tradition, and then Tibetan, which is what they call Vajra. It's from Vajrayana. Um, there's not really there's no deity. You're not worshiping Buddha. Buddha was just some guy who found a path that worked for him. And so you're following that path, but there's not anything to really believe other than what you find when you're practicing. And then there are precepts that are essentially do no harm. There's different things you agree to do um, to not harm others. But other than that, there's not some kind of belief system. And that's confusing to a lot of people. They think that, oh, I used to teach, especially this was especially true when I taught writing practice in Central Ohio in the early 2000s. And and I would ask in the class if anyone had ever meditated, and one person would just shyly put up their hand and then quickly take it down. And now, the whole room has meditated. So it's still, I think, confusing to people. They think, oh, I don't want to become a Buddhist, and I'm not sure you ever really become a Buddhist. You just practice. I'm sure that other people might believe differently, but that's sort of my spin on it. But yeah, my husband is absolutely an atheist. He's a big Sam Harris fan. He listens to all those podcasts, and he's into Stoicism too. He's sort of taken a different turn. He's into Stoicism with the big S, the philosophy of Stoicism. And but he's a real learner, a real curious guy, always questioning, kind of a skeptic, questioning everything. So yeah, he's
That's
he
interesting. I was looking up Buddhism. Every once in a while, I'll get really curious, and I'll usually while I'm at work, unfortunately, if my boss sees this, sorry, but I started looking up Zen Buddhism, and Zen Buddhism kind of tossed out the scholarly writings of Buddhism, and they believe that you're just going to go with intuition first. And that reminded me of things Natalie Goldberg wrote, like when people would try to give her instructions before she was going to see something, she didn't want to hear instruction before the experience. And I kind of understood like the minimalism of Zen. Zen is more minimalist in its decoration than other forms of Buddhism. One time I took a meditation class, and this was after I read Writing Down the Bones, but before I really understood sitting. And before I was really interested in the rest of Natalie Goldberg's books. Like, I read Writing Down the Bones one time and didn't pay any attention. And a friend of mine invited me to this meditation class, and they just did where we focused on the tip of our nose, the heat and the cooling. And years later, I went back and I found the meditation class. I live in Florence, South Carolina, which is the coastal plains about 60 miles from Myrtle Beach. Columbia is our capital, and it's also 60 miles away to the west. I looked up that meditation center that had come to Florence to teach the class. And it was actually New Kadampa tradition. And I went to two of the classes, and it was interesting. And then, and no shade, but this is I was talking to the people afterwards, and this one guy that went there, he goes, "Yes, did you know that we're considered a cult?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know that we were a cult. Like, why?" He goes, "Well, the Dalai Lama said that this was a cult." Then I was shocked, and I did some research, and there's all kinds of things about it, and I was like, "Oh well." I kind of I kind of thought that it was all one thing. Like I didn't realize there was a difference in the different types of Buddhism. And so but that was there. And then I became interested in Harry Dean Stanton. Do you remember him?
Oh no, that sounds familiar, but remind me.
He is an actor and he starred in two movies. The first one was called Paris, Texas in 1984, and the second one was 2017 called Lucky. And I recommend
Oh,
Lucky. Love it. Recommend it. And he in real life, so Lucky, he worked on a script that was basically his real life, and so it's him, and it's all things that he would have said, and it's his life, and it's a man who is facing the void, an old man who's facing the void. So he's doing lots of walking around this California town and a little bit in Arizona, and he I started watching a lot of interviews after I saw this movie, and Harry Dean Stanton said that Buddhism got everything right that we knew about reality. And then he talked about um, David Lynch, um, and he talked about meditating. Now, David Lynch is not a Buddhist; he's a transcendental meditationer,
yeah.
which is a little bit of a different thing. But Harry Dean Stanton didn't sit; he thought everything was meditation, but I think he considered himself Buddhist a little bit, but he was also an atheist. So the movie is this man who's very Zen, like he's just doing whatever he finds to do, and he's facing the void. And I always wondered, um, like if I couldn't. I was trying to figure out like if he didn't believe in God, what was the benefit of meditating? It was just questions I was always wondering. And then I was watching from that the Zen Center with Joan Halifax. I
Right,
don't remember the name.
Upaya, 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 Upaya.
Right. Okay. And then I saw the chant at the beginning, and it was, "I'm going to try to focus on reality and meet reality where it was." And I was like, okay, so it's kind of like an exercise to meet reality. And then I came across on Reels. Do you watch Reels on Instagram or Facebook?
Sometimes, yeah.
And I came across this one man named Ask Cliff, and he's an apologist, a Christian apologist who goes on different campuses, and people ask him questions, and he just has these interesting conversations with people. And someone asked him about Buddhism, and he said Siddhartha has great writings on the nature of reality. He said no one did them better than him, but he didn't go further than reality. And that was the crux of it. And then I just thought, oh, so the things that I guess reality is hard. I that's the
Yeah. Depends on
I
your
know.
life, but yeah, eventually you're gonna um I I'm pretty sure that Shinzen Young, who's my primary meditation teacher, other than Natalie, I would say, um, he said at one point that, and this is a bad paraphrase, but everyone at some point in their life is going to get pushed out of a perfectly good plane while it's flying in the air. That's kind of the bad news. The good news is you get a parachute. The news that's neither good or bad is that you have to knit or sew that parachute yourself. And so the question is, when do you want to start creating the parachute? When you're on the plane or now, long before you get on the plane? And his analogy was that meditation was the practice of knitting your parachute because it would help you deal with whatever arises. Some people would love to, they skydive. They would love to fall from a plane with a parachute. They think that's a thrill. Me, I'll be screaming all the way down. um, so, um, so that's kind of the thing about reality is we've been taught in our society right now, especially social media and a lot of the, great advances we've had, we're taught to turn away from reality. We're taught to um, tighten up and turn away. And meditation is a practice in learning how to turn toward reality, both pleasant and unpleasant and neutral, um, and be with it exactly as it is. And it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, I write books. My most recent book is about daily practices, tiny little shinzen. We call them mindful micro hits of meditation. The book I wrote before that was about how to meditate while you're exercising, and I primarily run, but it's about any movement form. And yeah, they're not. I mean, there's a lot of joy in it for me. I've found a lot of relief and a lot of joy. Um, but not everybody wants to do it because it's not always pleasant. And we want, I mean, I much prefer chocolate to bitter foods. Who doesn't? So that's kind of the thing. Yeah, it's tough.
Do you write every day?
No, no, I'm more of a phoenix writer where I flame, and then I flame out, and then I rest, and then the embers start, to kind of heat up again, and then I flame, and then burn out and rest. So yeah, I tried to write every day. I tried to do writing practice every day. I actually did that for years, and it didn't really I mean, it got me, what it got me was a relationship with myself. It got me, um, it gave me a spine too. I mean, if I have to write every day, I can. I know how to do that. It built endurance, a writing endurance, and a tolerance for the fact that a lot of times what I write is crap, and that's just the way it is. But but I'm better when I have a project that I'm working on and kind of a sort of like an arrow that I can point at myself toward and shoot myself toward that arrow. I don't always know where I'm going. The arrow's flailing about, but when I'm going, that's kind of the way I work. And that does not, I mean, some people need to write every day. They do well when they have that structure. But another, if I have messages, which you're supposed to have messages now that I'm this author that is on social media and stuff. It's that one size does not fit all. So whenever I have to catch myself because I say, oh, just follow your gut, or oh, just listen to your intuition. Not everybody can do that. That just is my skill set. That's my ability. Other people have to do tons of research. Other people have to get lots of outside input. Other people have to have different structures. I do well with structure. I do, like, whenever my the she was the editor, now she's the publisher. Um, but whenever she emails me and says she wants something, if she does not give me a deadline, I immediately write back and say, "Hey, need a hard deadline. What's your deadline on this?" And she goes, "Oh, that's right. This is Nita," and she'll send me a deadline, and then we're good. But if I don't have a deadline, I'm like, well, it's not on fire. And I worked at a law firm when I was a partner in a law firm. We had, I think at any given time, we had about 300 active cases and there were 5 lawyers. I mean, it was insane. And our motto was, if it's not on fire, it does not exist. And while there were lots of things about that job that were a very poor fit for me, that part of it I was absolutely suited for, because I do best when I have a very hard deadline, when I know exactly what you want and when it's due and things like that. So I have no idea where that answer came from, but oh, you asked me if I wrote every day. No, no,
Do you run every day?
no. Oh, no. I haven't run for a while because I was sick. But my when I first started running, and I was what, 12 years younger, 13 years younger, I would run about 4 or 5 days a week. But now it's more, when I have a training plan, it's more a 3 day a week training plan. I try to walk every day, and I walk. My goal is to walk about 2 miles every day with my dog, and then run 3 days a week, including those days. And one of those days is a hard workout. One of those days is a long workout, and then one day is just very easy peasy workout. And that's what, as I age, I um, just can't quite do as much. I mean, well, I say that I just, in June of this year, I did my third ultra marathon, so I guess I can still do a few things, but I do better with less, um, less running and more walk intervals, and just keeping moving is really the big thing.
When I was a runner, and I'm not, now I'm an avid walker, but I used to always write about running, and then when I was running, I was thinking about writing.
That still is totally true for me. Well, actually, that and breakfast. When
Oh,
I'm writing, I'm thinking about breakfast. When I'm running, I'm thinking about breakfast. When I'm eating breakfast, I'm thinking about breakfast. Yeah, I'm a big breakfast fan.
so
I'll have
breakfast is
breakfast
your
for
favorite
dinner.
meal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
24 hours a day.
what time do you eat breakfast every day?
Oh, that depends. So lately I've been waking up about 7, and I have to take a thyroid medication, which I have to wait 30 minutes to before I can eat anything or drink anything other than water or take anything else. So maybe 7:45, 8 o'clock. It just depends on when I can get to breakfast.
I wish um that everyone served breakfast all day long because I like to fast in the morning, but breakfast is my favorite food. It's I mean I'm always down for an omelet, waffle, bacon, coffee, and it tastes best in the morning, but
Yeah.
um I
Well, they
love it
call
too.
it break fast. I mean, you're
Right?
breaking the fast. There are a couple of restaurants here that are really breakfast. I mean, well, the one does serve lunch, but they're open till 2, and so I can still get breakfast for lunch up until 2, and that's great. But my husband, Ed's the cook. I am not a cook, and every once in a while he'll just make some veggies and scrambled eggs, scramble that up, maybe some sausage or bacon, but usually just mostly vegetables and scrambled eggs, and that is just the perfect dinner. He makes other wonderful things that are normal dinner too, but I just love breakfast for dinner.
If anyone were to read your books or see your social media, they would know that you call Ed the 100%, is it fantastic husband?
Good. He's the 100% good husband.
The
Right.
100% good husband. And we get a long list of qualities about how great Ed is. I want to marry Ed. You know, he worked 3 jobs when y'all lived in Taos.
Oh, it was so hard. He's such a trooper. And I mean, we have our days, but he really is a good man. Now, that hashtag came from a different hashtag, which a lot of people don't realize. We got so Morgan, the dog I ran with in Depression It's a Moving Target, he was already 6 when I started running. And so he has gone to, the great dog park in the sky now, whatever. And very shortly, less than 36 hours, I believe, after Morgan died, Ed texted me, and he was at a pet store, which I would never buy a dog from. I'm a big rescue person. We rescued Morgan. We'd rescued most of our other dogs. Just that's just my thing. But he'd been there holding this yellow Labrador puppy for an hour. They'd completely bonded. And so what was I going to do? Say, no, you can't have the puppy? So he brings home this 4-month-old puppy mill puppy who has been not socialized at all, where normal, even a rescue dog, sometimes they'd come from breeders and maybe not, but they usually have been socialized at the pound or I mean, they just have been through some stuff. This dog's basically been in a cage for 4 months because it was an Amish puppy mill. It is and I just love her, but she's the worst dog we've ever had. She's 6 now, and she still is shredding stuff. And I mean, you cannot turn your back on her. We have to have everything up off the counters. Everything has to be up high. And so I coined her the 99% good dog. And that was, I think, I'm not sure if that was before Depression Hates a Moving Target, because Morgan had already died before Depression Hates a Moving Target came out, which made me so sad, but that's just the way it worked. And so she had this hashtag, and she is the 99% good dog, and it's all spelled out. There's no dashes, no numbers. It's just all the letters. So somebody said to me, well, doesn't Ed need a hashtag? And I thought, well, he can't be any less than the 99% good something. And so he's the 100% good husband. And he really is. I mean, he's just a good man. Um, he can be cantankerous. He has a book called How to Be a Really Good Pain in the Ass. And he kind of lives by that because he questions everything. I mean, he'll question me on all kinds of things. Why do you believe that? Why do you think that's true? How does that? And that can make some people crazy. And I probably didn't put enough of that in Depression Hates a Moving Target, because what I wanted people to understand is that I would not have the life I have without that man. Um, I would not, I mean, he just has cared for me in times when I absolutely could not care for myself, primarily because of my mental health. And then the tables turned. And then, after Depression Is Moving Target came out, he had a heart attack when we were on book tour in Los Angeles in a hotel. And we didn't know he had a heart attack. So we flew home. It was a silent heart attack. Thank God he lived. Um, and then, he was on a feeding. He had pneumonia. He eventually had open heart surgery. Then he was on a feeding tube for, I think, 4 months. So, we've kind of had role reversal back and forth as we both age. But yeah, I mean, he just is a good man. And I mean, for me, he's the right guy for me. Absolutely, no question.
What if he were to write a book? What would be on the list of great things about you that he would say?
Oh, when I'm kind, when I'm nice, when I'm polite to him, not polite, but kind. That's his big thing, being nice to me. He has not always had people be nice to him, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Um, but that's the thing and I'm not talking about compliments. He likes gifts, but it's more spending time with him, listening to him talk about whatever, right now he is much more, I mean, I'm a reader, but he is a crazy avid reader. He's got 4 or 5 books going at a time, and there's stacks and stacks is like emotional support to be read pile at any given time. And he loves it when he's just made some kind of discovery or read something new, and I will sit down and just listen as he explains what he's just learned. He takes classes at there. Once you're 60, you can take classes. I think it's most universities, but at least in Ohio, any public university, you can take classes. And I want to say he's taken 30 classes. You don't get credit, that you're auditing the class, but so he'll come back right now. Right now he's taking the sociology of death and dying. You talk about looking into the void. He's yeah. And so he'll come back and he'll tell me about, well, we went to the crematorium and here's what I saw. I was like, okay, and buckle up, buddy, because you're gonna go for the right frame. But that's the biggest thing with him is, and then um helping him. So I learned computers. I'm 20 years younger. It's like 19 years between us, basically, depending on whose birthday it is. And I learned computers actually when I was in high school. I got to sort of see them. My father worked in computers for Ohio Bell, so I was sort of around that. And then when I was in college, in journalism school, immediately they had us on. I can't even remember what they were, but uh, it was the precursor to PCs and things. And so I have been pretty tech savvy for a long time. And so when we met, he wasn't. He was still, they did still everything on paper. This was like 93. So he was in his job. They were still doing a lot of things on paper. And so I have taught him a lot of things about, I mean, they had email and things, but taught him a lot of things about tech stuff. And whenever he needs help with something, me helping him, even if we're yelling at each other because I'm not doing it right, or he's not, whatever, because we're married, so that happens. But I can tell that me taking the time to really listen and really try to figure out what's going wrong, it just means a lot to him. That's his, there's that book, The 5 Love Languages, which people love to hate that book. That has been one of the most helpful books, because what we figured out is that our love languages are opposite. And so So doing things that he likes. He loves getting cards. I do too, but that's not, gifts is not one of my love languages. Words of affirmation are though. So what he writes in the card is important, whereas to him the card itself is important. And then with him, um, quality time. So quality time and words of affirmation or gifts are his, and mine are physical touch and words of affirmation. So we have learned how to, kind of go, oh, that's right, that's not my love language. Because I can tell him all day how great he is, and he just goes like, he goes, what do you want? It's like he's he thinks I'm buttering him up or something. And no, that's my love language. And I always forget, oh, that's right. It doesn't work with him at all.
So he studied with Katagiri also.
Yes, yeah, I never did. No, 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 not Katagiri. Dido, John Dido Laurie. Did I say? I might have said category. If I said that, I misspoke. No, neither one of us ever started with category. Katagiri. He studied at Zen Mountain Monastery with Katagiri Roshi
With Katagiri
in New
Roshi.
York. Right, in New York, Mount Tremper, New York. Right.
And that's the same one that Natalie studied with, right?
No, Dido.
Dido. Okay, I thought
If
you
I'm
said
saying Katagiri, I don't mean Katagiri.
okay.
John Dido Laurie.
Okay. But
John Dido Laurie.
Roshi is the title, right? Is
Yeah,
everybody
Roshi just means honorific. It just means honorable. It's like a minister or
okay? Reverend.
doctor or reverend or I don't know, teacher.
Okay.
It probably means teacher. I believe Roshi is a Japanese term. Oh, that's one other thing I wanted to say was Zen. The the thing about Zen is that really the thing about Buddhism, it's kind of like tofu. It takes on the flavor of whatever it's around. So the minimalist styles of um, Japan and the samurai, especially, highly influenced Buddhism when it came from India to Japan. So there's another type of similar Buddhism called Chan, which is from China. And it's a little more ornate than Zen, but still has that Asian minimalistic kind of flavor. Whereas when Buddhism went to Nepal and Tibet, that was their culture is more flowery and more they have a lot of kind of spiritualism that isn't in Japan. And so if you study Tibetan Buddhism or Vajrayana, which is kind of the big word, the umbrella term that Tibetan falls under, because there is also Japanese Vajrayana, they have deities, but they're not considered spiritual. They're things that you emulate, but it's much more complex. It's like Baroque. It's sort of like the Baroque Buddhism, because Buddhism takes on the flavor of whatever culture. And so American Buddhism has taken on psychology. A lot of the psychological analyses and teachings that you will hear from Insight Meditation Society, I'm trying to think, Spirit Rock, a lot of those more American, there are American Buddhist teachers. There's always that a little bit of flavor of psychology to it, and that's probably more where I come from with it too. When I do teach and when I do some coaching with people, it has that flavor of it. And so I just want to make sure that because you brought that up sort of before about how Zen is so kind of sparse and minimalist, and it took on the flavor of the culture that it kind of came through.
Okay, that's very cool. Well, Nita, we're getting towards the end of the interview.
Oh my goodness, yes,
And
we are.
and the Paul Leslie Hour, which was a radio show in Atlanta, it's now a podcast out of Charleston. And he's got many interviews out there, all the every gambit of human you could ever think of. And I even got to help him record an interview recently, and that was a lot of fun. But I take his lead, and his recommendation for the last question is to give the show over to the guest so that she can say whatever is on her heart and mind to the void, but hopefully not the void. Hopefully someone in 2000 years will see this and hear your message. But it could happen tomorrow. It could happen next week. It could be someone in Japan or China or Nepal or Kenya or Madagascar or Canada. So knowing that your message could go out to anyone and everyone at any point in the future, the show's now yours, Nita.
Stay. Things might seem difficult right now. They will change. Please stay.
Thank you, Nita Sweeney.
Yes, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.